Good afternoon, and welcome to another session and episode podcast series of family and friends gather around the table. I am your host, Bad Boy Gabe, and as previously told, we are going to enter a series today that hits at the very core of our democracy. Three branches of government to form a more perfect union. Today's first episode, we're going to discuss the Constitution's birth, from rebellion to blueprint. So we all know the words. Yes, we do. We all know the words. To form, we, the people of the United States of America, to form a more perfect union. But what does that really mean? What does it mean to form a more perfect union when so many have been left out of its promises? When Black America has faced centuries of exclusion, oppression, and systematic inequalities, how do we, a nation, work towards fulfilling the dream of liberty and justice for all? The truth is, the three branches of government created to uphold the democracy have not always worked equally for everyone. The executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches were designed to balance power, but power has not always been balanced for Black America. So today, as you gather around the table, we'll ask the hard questions. Are these branches truly working to form a more perfect union? Are they? Or do they still carry the weight of the old system's inequalities? But more importantly, what must be done to create a union that works for everyone? So I want you today to listen closely, challenge your own understanding, because only when we face the truths of how our nation's systems have operated and continue to operate can we, the people, demand or create change. This isn't just another conversation. This is a call to action, a call to accountability, and a call to awareness. So come on, pull up a chair, take a seat, relax for a few minutes, and take in and think, ponder these thoughts and the information that I am about to share with you. And as we say at Bad Boy, take a scroll back to the foundation of this thing we call government and forward to how it has impacted our lives today. So, in this series, which is 5 parts, The first episode, which we're going to go through today, is to form a more perfect union, the birth of the Constitution, from rebellion to blueprint. In episode 2, we will discuss the voting power at the polls or political theater. In episode 3, the local government, you know, the power we tend to ignore. Episode 4 is the Constitution versus the community. Whose rights matter? And finally, the fifth and concluding episode to this series is going to be redefining democracy through art, voice, and truth. So, if you, as an American citizen or as a foreign student studying here, have ever felt powerless, understand this. The system works best when you know how it works. So, to give you a little background into this, and we're going to move quite quickly, but I want to give you, it's going to be quite a bit of information shared with you. But please think, I urge you to think, challenge your own understanding. In the post-revolution in America, it tried to operate under the Articles of Confederation, but very quickly found that those documents only left the nation weak, broken, and fractured. But in 1787, the delegates completely scrapped it. Yes, they did, in secret, and gave birth to this new system. Yes, the one we are discussing today, the U.S. Constitution. The unfiltered truth of all of this is the Constitution wasn't born from unity. It was born from conflict, a battle of interests between the wealthy elites, the small and large states, and the slave holding versus the non-slave holding. Each group came to the table with fear, ambition, and demands. The southern states fought to protect slavery. The large states wanted representation by population. The small states demanded equality in votes. And the wealthy elites, they wanted to lock in protection for their assets. They didn't fix the system. They replaced it to protect their own interests. The Constitution, although never perfect, it was a promise, yes, not of equality, but of potential. The potential that would rest in the new architecture of three branches. These framers feared tyranny, but they also feared the people. They didn't want any rule of a king, but they didn't want a majority rule either. Their answer: split the power into three separate parts. And just a little food for thought in splitting those. Understand this, America. A government powerful enough to protect you is powerful enough to control you. That's why it must be divided. A hard reality check is the original democracy wasn't preserved for everyone, but only preserved for land owning white men. The system wasn't built to uplift everyone, it was to safeguard the power of the privileged few. The founders created a structure that maintained their status and influence while excluding entire communities. So, what inspired this structure? Let's take a look at some of the influences. For example, a gentleman by the name of Locke, John Locke to be exact, believed every individual was born with natural rights of life, liberty, and property. The government shouldn't exist to protect, the government should only exist, to protect these rights and not grant them, but defend them. Some of the influences of the United States Constitution also came from individuals of a French descent. Many argued that concentrating power in one or a group leads to tyranny. The idea was to divide it amongst the branches so no one could dominate the rest. Then there was the belief of social contract, the idea that government draws their power from the people's consent. We, the people of the United States, to form a more perfect union. If the government stops serving the people have the right, even the duty, to change it. The people give power to the government, not the other way around. That was the belief and the influence of the framework of our forefathers when they sat in the Second Congress and started writing what we now know as our Constitution. These ideas were revolutionary during that time frame, but they weren't applied to everyone. The philosophies promised liberty and equality, but in practice, they were limited to a small, privileged group. In theory, was universal, but the reality was exclusive. Now, we have three branches. Yes, the legislative branch. Oh yeah, that branch is the branch that is to make the laws. We know them to date as Congress, which are set into two separate sections. One we know as the House of Representatives, and the second set we know as the Senate. Their purpose is to represent the people and to create the laws that govern the country. However, the reality of it and the hard truth is lawmakers are supposed to reflect the will of the people. But too often, they listen to lobbyists, corporations, and wealthy donors who fund their campaigns. Lobbyists and mega donors hold more sway than the most of us that vote. Policies follows money, not people. The executive branch enforces the laws. The President of the United States, aka the Commander in Chief. His purpose is to enforce the laws passed by Congress lead the nation and manage foreign affairs and the military. The reality is, over time, the presidents have expanded their power through the executive orders, emergency powers, and control of federal agencies. It's leadership, but it's also creeping authority. Presidential power has dramatically grown. What was meant to be leadership is now bordering on imperialism. And finally, the judicial branch, the branch that is to interpret the laws, the Supreme Court and federal courts. The purpose to interpret the laws were to ensure that they align with this document we are addressing today, the United States Constitution. Justices are appointed for life. That means they wield enormous influence for decades with no check from the people. Food for thought. 9 unelected people, 9 unelected people can change the course of 400 million lives. That's not balance, my friend. No, no, no. That's not balance. That's raw power. Which brings us to the glue of it all, the checks and the balances. The importance of checks and balances is intentionally set to slow down decision making to prevent abuse. The checks and balances don't work if everyone is on the same team or playing the same game. The modern challenge is political parties now override branch loyalty. Instead, each branch operating independently to check the other. Politicians often follow party lines, ignore their branch's duties to provide oversight that makes them, and it makes our system of democracy fragile and easily manipulated. If the same party controls all branches, checks break down. Loyalty to the party becomes stronger than loyalty to the people, you, I, the constituents of the people that we select. This is what happens when power goes unchecked. Watergate happens. Nixon used the government to spy and to lie, and the system itself barely caught him. And in his own words, and I quote, "When the president does it, that means it's not illegal." During the World War, unchecked power caused 110 plus thousand Japanese citizens of the United States to be detained without cause, and the courts stayed silent. In post 9/11, mass surveillance, privacy shredded, big brother's watching you. Most didn't know, and most still don't know. January 6th, a president called supporters to the Capitol. That's dictatorship energy, not democracy. And in our current political climate, Supreme Court rulings are reshaping rights. Yet justices are appointed for life, not accountable to the people. State legislators are passing voting restrictions targeting marginalized communities while federal protections remain stalled. Elected officials ignore subpoenas and refuse accountability, choosing loyalty to a party or a figurehead over democratic norms. Disinformation is being spread unchecked on social media, yet Congress fails to regulate tech platforms, partly due to lobbying and gridlock. The Democratic Party, where do they play in all of this? My response to you is this: the cold, hard truth and the way it is that despite controlling key institutes at times, the Democratic Party has often failed to act decisively. Internal conflicts, fear of political backlash, and a reliance on tradition led to inaction, even when the stakes were high. The truth is, the government today is not what the framers envisioned. No, it's not what they envisioned at all. It is increasingly dysfunctional, polarized, and stagnant. The original system was flawed, yes, but what we have now is gridlock dressed in tradition. And the question is, are we brave enough to build something better? Now, in the first episode, I said, it's not about fixing what is broken, but forging something together in truth and respect, in transparency. And in order to do this, we have to be willing to face the cold, hard truths. America is increasingly disillusioned with the two-party system, that I honestly believe that a viable third party, it's possible, but only if voters demand accountability. If grassroots movements start to gain traction and not fizzle out, and the media gatekeeping breaks. From book bans to gerrymandering, America risks returning to the past, a past that silenced voices and suppressed freedoms. Progress isn't guaranteed, only fought for. Democracy dies when we stop checking power and start cheering it. If you've ever, again, felt powerless, understand this: the system works best when you know how it works. So, in closing, if you made it this far, Don't keep it to yourself. I urge you to call your people. Share this episode with your family, your neighbors, your co-workers, your crews at the barbershop or the salon. Have the hard conversations. Make this podcast the beginning of a bigger movement. The truth, we can't wait for change. We must be the change. From your block to the ballot box, we hold the power. If your elected officials don't represent your values, your struggles, your dreams, it's time to replace them with someone who does. Start where you organize, where you build, where you vote, and where you speak. One city at a time, one country, one state, and ultimately one nation. We, the people of the United States. We have explored now a little bit of the three branches and hit on a little bit of how they operate. But in closing, this is me, your host, of family friends gather around the table, Bad Boy Gabe. And remember, stay bold, stay creative, and remember, the revolution starts when you dare to challenge what is expected.